The sign above the bakery still had her recipe in its name, Maple Hearth Bakery. Her grandmother's maple glaze, her own hands every morning for 14 years. But the ownership documents filed with the state of Oregon that week did not have her name on them at all. Not as a partner, not as an owner, not as anyone. Hannah Reyes stood in the parking lot of the bakery she had built from a single rented kitchen into one of Portland's most beloved pâtissières, holding a printout of business registration records she had requested out of simple curiosity. Her name was nowhere on the page. Her husband's name was there. His mother's name was there. Hers had been removed 14 months earlier. She had never signed anything removing it. Hannah Reyes was 36 years old when she discovered her own erasure. She had trained as a pastry chef in San Francisco before moving to Portland, Oregon in 2010 for a position at a small bakery owned by the Whitfield family. The bakery was struggling, outdated recipes, declining foot traffic, a storefront that had not been renovated since the 1990s. Hannah met Marcus Whitfield, the owner's son, within her first month working there. He was warm in a way that felt easy. He talked about wanting to modernize the family business. She found herself talking about it too, sketching new menu concepts on napkins during her breaks. They married in 2012. By then, Hannah had already redesigned the bakery's entire product line, new seasonal menus, a signature maple hazelnut croissant that began drawing lines down the block by 2014, local press coverage. A second location opened in 2017, funded partly by a $50,000 loan Hannah secured personally using her own credit history because the family's existing credit was already overextended. In 2013, Marcus's father, the original owner, verbally agreed in front of the family's accountant that Hannah would hold 50% ownership of the renamed business, now called Maple Hearth Bakery, in recognition of her role in saving it from closure. A formal ownership document was drafted and signed that year. Hannah kept her copy in a fireproof box at home. She had never needed to look at it again. She had believed for 9 years that it simply did not need to be looked at. There were moments scattered across those years that she had let slide without examining too closely. The way Marcus's mother, Diane Whitfield, introduced her at family gatherings as Marcus's wife who helps out at the bakery, never as a partner, never as the person who had rebuilt the business from nothing. She had told herself it was just an old woman's way of speaking. She had no idea it was a preview. Diane Whitfield was 67 years old and ran Maple Hearth Bakery alongside her late husband for 31 years before Hannah ever arrived. To the Portland business community, Diane was a respected matriarch, gracious at Chamber of Commerce events, beloved by longtime customers who remembered the bakery's earlier decades. What the community did not see was Diane's quiet, persistent belief that Hannah had never truly belonged to the family business, regardless of what any document said. Diane had never forgiven Hannah for what she viewed as outsider influence reshaping a business her husband had built. When Marcus's father passed away in 2019, Diane inherited his remaining ownership stake and became for the first time the majority decision-maker in the business. Marcus, meanwhile, had been growing distant from his marriage for nearly 2 years, having begun a relationship with a woman named Sarah Kessler in 2020, a relationship he kept hidden from Hannah while continuing to work alongside her at the bakery every day.
Hannah and Marcus began discussing, quietly in early 2021, what would happen to the bakery if Marcus and Hannah ever divorced. Diane made her position clear in those conversations. She told Marcus the business should never have had Hannah's name on it in the first place. Marcus agreed to fix what he called a mistake from years ago. The plan unfolded over several months in 2021.
In March 2021, Diane Whitfield, using her majority stakeholder following her husband's death, filed amended business registration documents with the Oregon Secretary of State, restructuring Maple Hearth Bakery's ownership to list only herself and Marcus as owners. The amended filing included a document purporting to show Hannah's voluntary relinquishment of her ownership stake, dated and signed with a signature that closely resembled Hannah's own. Hannah had never signed any such document. Marcus had provided Diane with several samples of Hannah's signature from old greeting cards and tax documents stored in their shared home office, which Diane had used to have the relinquishment document professionally forged by an associate of a family friend who had years earlier done similar paperwork favors for other Whitfield family matters. Throughout 2021, Hannah noticed Diane beginning to exclude her from supplier meetings she had always attended. She noticed Marcus deflecting questions about a paperwork update the accountant had mentioned needing her signature for, which never seemed to actually require her presence. She noticed family dinners where Diane would mention almost casually that the bakery's Rio owners needed to discuss expansion plans, looking only at Marcus. In November 2021, at a family gathering, Diane told Hannah directly in front of several relatives that Hannah had always been an employee who married into convenience, and that the family had carried her long enough. Hannah left that dinner and drove to her sister's house instead of home. 2 months later, out of simple curiosity after a tax document seemed inconsistent, she requested the bakery's current ownership filing from the Oregon Secretary of State's Public Records Office. Her name was gone. It had been gone for 10 months. She had never known. Hannah filed for divorce in February 2022, the same week she discovered the ownership filing. She hired attorney Catherine Boyd of Boyd Family Law in Portland, who specialized in business asset division during divorce proceedings. Catherine reviewed the amended ownership filing and the alleged relinquishment signature within their first meeting. This signature was not made under duress or pressure. It was not made at all. This is forgery. And if there is an original 2013 ownership agreement somewhere, we need to find it before they realize you remember it exists. Hannah remembered the fireproof box at home. She retrieved the original 2013 ownership document, signed by Marcus's late father, witnessed by the family's longtime accountant, Walter Higgins, the same week she filed. When Marcus and Diane were formally notified of the divorce filing and the accompanying legal challenge to the ownership amendment, Diane's response was immediate and aggressive. She attempted to have Walter Higgins, the accountant who had witnessed the original 2013 document, removed from the company's records as an act of retaliation for what she suspected he might confirm. Walter Higgins had already kept his own copy of the original agreement for 9 years as a matter of professional habit. He gave it to Catherine Boyd without hesitation. The case was heard before the Honorable Judge Renata Cole Anderson in the Multnomah County Circuit Court, Family Law Division, in Portland, Oregon. Docket number 2022-DR3315. Proceedings began in July 2022.
Catherine Boyd's argument centered on one clear timeline. Hannah had held a legitimate 50% ownership stake since 2013, and that stake had been fraudulently removed in 2021, specifically in anticipation of a divorce that Marcus and his mother already knew was coming. Marcus's attorney, Philip Adler of Adler and Stone, argued that the 2013 document was an informal gesture, never intended as binding, and that the 2021 amendment simply corrected an outdated administrative record. Catherine called Walter Higgins to the stand on August 9, 2022. Walter testified that he had personally witnessed the 2013 agreement being signed by Marcus's father in his presence, with full understanding by all parties that it was a binding ownership document. He testified that he had retained his own notarized copy for 9 years as standard professional practice. He then testified to something Catherine had not previously disclosed to the court. In 2021, Diane Whitfield had personally asked him to alter his own financial records to remove any reference to Hannah's ownership percentage. He had refused. He told the court he had found the request deeply troubling and had documented it in writing at the time, in case it ever became relevant. Catherine introduced that written memo as Exhibit 19. Philip Adler attempted to characterize Walter as a disgruntled former associate. Walter Higgins looked directly at the judge and said, "I have done this family's books for 26 years. I am not disgruntled. I am telling the truth because somebody finally asked me to." Judge Renata Anderson then asked Diane Whitfield, who was present in the courtroom, a direct question. "Mrs. Whitfield, did you provide signature samples to anyone for the purpose of replicating Hannah Reyes's signature?" Diane did not answer for several seconds. Then she said, "I was protecting my family's business." Judge Anderson replied, "You were committing forgery. Those are not the same thing, and this court will treat them accordingly." On September 30, 2022, Judge Renata Cole Anderson ruled that the 2021 ownership amendment was fraudulent and void, restoring Hannah Reyes's 50% ownership stake retroactively to 2013. As part of the divorce settlement, Hannah was awarded her full ownership value, calculated at $3.4 million based on the bakery's current valuation across both locations, along with an additional $400,000 in damages for the fraudulent concealment. The Multnomah County District Attorney's Office opened a criminal investigation into forgery and fraud against Diane Whitfield. She was charged in December 2022 and pleaded guilty to 1 count of forgery in March 2023, receiving 18 months probation and a formal restitution order. Marcus was found civilly liable alongside his mother for knowing participation in the fraud and ordered to personally cover a portion of Hannah's legal fees. Hannah retained her ownership stake in Maple Hazel Bakery. She bought out Diane and Marcus's remaining interest within the following year, becoming sole owner of the business she had spent 14 years building. On the day the ruling was issued, Hannah drove back to the original bakery location on the way home from court. She stood in the kitchen for a long moment. Then she put on her apron and finished the afternoon's order of maple hazelnut croissants herself. Because the ovens do not stop simply because a courtroom has been won. For 14 years, Hannah Reyes built something with her hands that a family tried to erase with a forged signature. Diane Whitfield believed that if she removed Hannah's name from one piece of paper, she could remove 14 years of work from the truth itself. She forgot that truth, unlike a signature, cannot be forged into existence or out of it. It simply waits for someone willing to remember it correctly. Hannah Reyes did not get back the family gatherings where she was made to feel like an outsider in her own life's work, but she got back her name, and she got back her bakery. If your own name was erased from something you built with your hands, what would be the first thing you would go looking for? Tell us in the comments below. And subscribe to Divorce Diaries for a new divorce court drama story every single week. Because no matter whose name they put on the paper, the truth remembers who actually built it.